Welcome to Ideation Collective. I'm Jess Larson. Today on the episode is part 2 with Roeder, founder of Meet Edgar.
Managers will often say things like they don't care, they're lazy, they just can't be bothered to do it to the right level. And when you ask employees why they didn't perform, they usually have a good reason.
This is another episode of our Innovation and Leadership series where we interview pro athletes, world-class musicians, CEOs, Hollywood filmmakers, and a wide variety of other high achievers. Before we get rolling, I want to invite you to get involved with Child Rescue, the charity our founders started. To learn more about them, just come to our website, icollective.co, and check on the Child Rescue tab on our menu. Also, I want to talk to you about one of our show's sponsors. I met these guys back on episode 6. CEO Zach Smith was telling me all about starting a skateboard company and how much he hated doing the bookkeeping for a skateboard shop, and how he really got led to start this business, Bookly, that's a hybrid combining bookkeeping software and human services. And I'll tell you why I let him become a sponsor. It's because I use their service now. I don't love paying $50 an hour for bookkeepers to do stuff that I know software could do way, way cheaper. But I don't love bookkeeping at all. So I want a real live human who knows what they're talking about to help me with the stuff I don't understand. Probably the straw that broke the camel's back for me, though, the thing that put me over the top was that they could do my taxes and payroll also. So totally suggest checking them out. Go to their website, bookly.co, and check out their flat rates. I've been super happy with them. So now on to today's episode. It's a pretty incredible social media tool. It's a huge time saver in the way that not only can you schedule your posts, but it will continually repost for you on set schedules and help you really get multiple benefits from crafting one good piece of content rather than having all of us on the hamster wheel constantly putting out more and more content that may not have as high a quality and feel like we're dying, zombie feeling. But where we left off on part 1 was something that's a real soapbox for me, and it's the difference between trading hours for dollars versus building a system that can work for us. And I feel like in America, at least, we don't do that great a job of defining the difference. We lump it all together as entrepreneurship. And we don't differentiate between solopreneur or having a small business where you have to be present for it to work versus building the kind of system that can have a lot of duplication that can really grow independent of your personal hours. In your case, it was a constraint that happened to you, being pregnant as you're building this business, knowing you're going to have to be gone for 3 months. But from what you've learned about it, what advice would you give to anyone listening today who they think that sounds way better to be able to to have a system like that instead of my friend says, I love entrepreneurship. I get to pick which 16 hours a day I want to work.
Right. So, I think one of the biggest realizations that I had is if you think that you're the only one that can do things, you literally believe you are the most clever person on this planet. You're like, when I make partnership calls out of the billions of other people on this planet, I am the only one that can make this partnership calls, right? And I think realizing how totally absurd that belief is, helps you realize that anything that you can do, anything on your list, other people can do. And also recognizing the truth that a human is going to have to get this done. So I think this is a common mistake entrepreneurs make is they're obsessed with productivity and optimization and time management, but you can't optimize 16 hours of work into 10 hours of work. You know what I mean? We only have so many productive hours in a day, and there's a lot that needs to get done in a business. And the way to get those things done is to bring on other people, because then you get their hours too, right? Then the business isn't just your hours, it's lots of people's hours. And I think people are really scared of that. Especially when they first start to grow a team, people have a lot of bad experiences, right? Where they're like, oh, someone stole from me and I can't trust them, or they went and start a competitive business. People have these bad things happen, and then they just decide that, this is hard or this is not right for them. But the truth is, if you want this life where you're not working like crazy, everything still needs to get done, and somebody's going to have to do it.
It's interesting. You think about this idea. I think for so many of us, I think about have you seen any of those TED Talks from Brene Brown?
Yeah.
So I think about my time consulting. We've got a consulting firm now. I used to be a director at a different firm where I was in charge of the Special Operations Command and Intelligence Agency clients. So I'm like going to San Diego and teaching leadership classes to Navy SEALs, or going to Washington, D.C. and teaching like real life spies, right? Mm-hmm. And there's this sense of like, oh no, these guys have got it all put together. They don't have any insecurities. They're just going to eat me for lunch, right? But really, it was fascinating to become real friends with some of these guys and realize they have the same insecurities as the rest of us. Like Brene Brown says that she thinks most of us have this internal issue that we're worried if the group knew the truth about us, maybe they'd want to disconnect from us. Mm-hmm. And so we like work really hard to create all these external proofs to prove that we're of value, to prove that we matter, to prove that we belong, right? Mm-hmm. To whatever group we think is valuable. And in entrepreneurship, like how much money have you raised, or how many clients do you have, or what's your revenue, or what magazines have wanted to cover you? All these externals, they add up so that we don't have to really consider the truth, like that humans are worth as much as other humans, independent of external proof. Mm. In entrepreneurship, you can just work harder and you can get more proof and feed that like never-ending black hole inside ourselves, right? Of like the jury never stamps our case approved, right? So I'm interested in this thought because it does take a level of humility to look in the mirror and go, yeah, I have a unique aptitude and I've built some skill sets to achieve some levels of mastery to be able to accomplish this. And if I've done this, there's probably other humans who can too. Mm-hmm. Because if we're trying to hold ourselves up as belonging, as someone worthy of, respect or something like this, it feels competitive if somebody else could be as good as us at something, right?
Right. Yeah, and it feels a little threatening, right, to our self-importance. I remember I went on vacation for like 2 weeks and I came back and I was talking to our head of operations and I was like, did everything go okay while I was gone? And I was like, was anything weird? And she was like, we didn't usually you do those podcasts and like, we didn't do any of those. And that was the only thing. And I was like, my podcast interviews, that's the value that I add to this company. Like, okay. So it honestly made me feel like kind of bad and kind of amazing at the same time.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like, didn't they miss me?
Right,
I wasn't here,
Yeah, you want to keep yourself doing so much so that everyone will see how important you are and miss you so much while it's gone. But I mean, at the end of the day, I would much rather trade that, false importance for, being able to spend time with my family.
It is interesting, right? When we're thinking about starting the businesses, we have all these dreams of what success would look like at the end and all this freedom. And then most of us design lives that turn us into a slave to this organization, where we work for it, it doesn't work for us, right? Mm. I'm interested in, as you think about developing staff, this idea of, humility plus responsibility or things like this. As you're, having one-on-ones with staff or you think about leadership development within the organization, what are some of the theories that you use to grow the kind of business that you don't have to be present?
Yeah, so one of my favorite books on the topic is it has the worst title, talking about headlines, the worst title of all time. It's called Coaching for Improved Work Performance by Ferdinand Foundries. He does have a great name to make up for his horrible title. And something that I learned from that book is he was talking about how when you ask managers why people didn't perform, managers will often say things like they don't care, they're lazy, they just can't be bothered to do it to the right level. And when you ask employees why they didn't perform, they usually have a good reason. Like in his example, it was more about kind of retail employees or something like that, where they'll be like, well, I don't do that thing he wants me to do on the cash register because it never works. It always gives me an error message when I do it that way. So I just do it this way instead. Or I did all the cleaning, but then someone else came and they, cleaned it in a different way that I didn't know I was supposed to clean it. So the next time I just waited for them to do it. People have reasons why they do things. And most people are inherently motivated to do a good job just for the satisfaction and, the personal achievement and the enjoyment of it. And especially, so that's kind of retail level. When we're talking about knowledge worker type of jobs, hopefully people aren't getting into your company that are just like, whatever, maybe I'll just do the bare minimum. Maybe these people will pay me. Like, probably it's a higher bar there. Yet sometimes we go there when there's performance issues of just like, oh, well, they don't care enough, and they, apparently can't be bothered to complete this project. So I think looking at that perspective of, okay, just assume that everyone's trying their best. Like that might not connect with what you think the best is for whatever reason, but start with that outlook that they want to do this well, and also that you don't have to motivate them. Like, I don't believe that the employer motivates the employee. I believe that people are inherently self-motivated. So yeah, I feel like this is getting really, really complex really quickly, but those are kind of a few things that I believe about managing people.
Well, listen, I'm literally buying this on Kindle as we talk. I just click the place order button. But I'm thinking about this book by Marshall Rosenberg called Nonviolent Communication, where he talks about how often things go sideways when we assign intent to somebody else's action rather than asking about it, rather than finding out about it, right? And like, I remember some of my biggest struggles with staff members changed when I was listening to this audiobook that talked about maybe they're not resisting you. Maybe you haven't done your job enough to be clear. And you're confusing resistance to lack of clarity to resistance to you directing the business. And, I had these pair of sunglasses on that were like, no, they're the problem. Right. And it was this great, like, check your blind spots kind of moment for me. And fascinating how self-fulfilling prophecies can be when you assume that people want to do their best and that there's maybe something we're not doing as the boss or that we're not understanding as the boss, that when you actually have an open and honest conversation about it, that they come out, right?
Yeah. The way that our head of operations, Sarah, puts it, she always says that, like, we have to, if we're thinking about letting someone go, we have to earn our way out of the relationship because we really messed up. Like, if we hired someone and then we need to let them go, we messed up in the first place, right? We, for whatever reason, we didn't see that they weren't going to be a fit. So if that's the path you're going down, like, we have to earn our way out, meaning we have to make sure that we've done everything, because that is a big deal to let someone go. It's very disruptive to their life. It's, it's disruptive to the organization. It's not fun, but it needs to happen. So we have to make sure, like, okay, do we feel 100% clear that we've done everything we can, that we have set the expectations so clear and we have made it really easy for them where it's black and white of like, this is what you were asked to do and it didn't happen. Like, just very yes or no question. And if we feel very confident that that's happened, then we have earned our way out of that relationship.
It's interesting, the internal conflict firing people, right? Like, when we know that we're making their life harder. And I actually feel like it's worse when I haven't gotten to that place that you're talking about of like this like level of deep honesty about, hey, if I keep them, am I not being responsible to the business?
Right.
Like, am I letting them go because, they mess some things up and I'm mad at them? Or like, have I really, like you said, given them the opportunity to win? Like, have I earned the right to make this decision? And unfortunately for me, many times it's like, no, there's a serious lack of clarity on my part. There's a like, I haven't, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm mad at them right now, but I haven't given them the tools to win. And that, and like, can I really feel good about letting them go when I haven't given them the tools to win? Which might just be like the frank conversation of, hey, you're dropping the ball. And if this continues, we won't be able to keep you.
Right.
Sometimes I get this like list of shoulds going in my head. Of, well, they should know. Everybody knows.
Right.
Yeah. Not so helpful.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Right. Have you had that really honest conversation? And, something else that we found really hard is that everyone who comes through the doors is really great. Like, when we let someone go, they're really, really talented, and really great to work with. They're just, for various reasons, like, not a fit for the company right now. Which, maybe they were a fit 6 months ago, or maybe they will be a fit a year from now. We're growing really fast, right? We've gone from like 0 to 18 people in 2 years. So that's another thing that we've really had to like form this deep understanding of as a team. Like, when we're letting someone go, it's not because they suck, like not even close, because they wouldn't have made it this far if they weren't good at what they do. And so, because it's so hard to let someone go being like, but they're a really talented developer. Are we really like letting them go? They're so talented. But it's like, yes, it isn't what's right for us right now.
Well, and I think for me too, like, I think of that like cardboard cutout version of myself I wish everybody believed, right? And for me, like a lot of times I've wanted to, besides wearing the badge of busy, like, when people ask you how to do, oh, I'm so busy, like somehow that makes us important, right? The other badge is the nice boss, right? Mm-hmm. And let's face it, the nice boss doesn't fire people, Mm-hmm. And really like tearing that badge off and just being like the responsible leader has been harder because I preferred the nice boss label, Anyway. Hey, another question we like to ask guests is we've got this charity, Child Rescue, trying to prevent child trafficking. And we're always trying to get more people involved and generate more supporters. And like one of the things we've got right now, we've got this program. It's the website's cares.savvy, which is savvi.com/rescue. And it's this program where people sign up for basically like a Costco membership. It's like $15 a month, but it'll save them like $20 a month on their cell phone bill, plus, discounts on flights and hotels and all this shopping kind of stuff, right? Kind of like an Amazon Smile type of thing. So we're trying to, what happens is $5 from that Costco membership ends up going to our charity every month. So we can, help feed the kids at the aftercare orphanage in Peru or stuff like this, right? Mm. So if you were us or you're our advisor, say, trying to help generate traffic, maybe coming from social or something else to try and get people to this landing page, what are kind of some of the go-to things that you'd suggest to us?
Well, can I go like off script a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like maybe not so directly related to that, and I'm not familiar with your organization, so sorry if I'm just like rehashing something that you already do really well. But as far as encouraging donors, an organization I always look to is Donors Choose. Mm. And you're probably familiar with how you get like letters from the kids that you help. Do you know about this?
Well, I saw that you the school teacher will like take a picture of the art supplies and send it to you so you get proof or something. I didn't know about the letters. Yeah,
so you often get, or always, I'm not sure, every time I've donated, you get like actual like cards and letters from the kids in the class, because they'll have the kids, make you like a little homemade thank you card being like, thanks for the tambourines, we use them all the time. So you get this like big envelope in the mail just full of like joy, just because just adorable, wonderful, like little cards they've made. And of course it costs overhead for the organization to, mail these and blah, blah, blah. So there's a bit of sacrifice there, but it makes it so fun to donate. And so as an organization, we've given employees Donors Choose gift cards. So the employee gets to choose the project, and then like we'll all post on Slack pictures of the cards the kids sent us. It's just a really fun idea. So I think whenever a nonprofit can do anything to connect the donor with not just like a kind of generic thank you from someone who has been helped, but if you can like go as far as to make that connection, which technology is starting to allow us to do, to like the actual human that your $5 helped. That just is so moving to people and so makes them understand like, okay, this isn't just a photo that they took 3 years ago of some kid in one of their programs. Like this is a kid now that my $5 actually went to.
Mm. Yeah. There's something about closing the loop, right?
Yeah.
The feeling like you got to follow the water all the way to the end of the row with that. Huh.
Yeah. And like, I think, Charity Water has done something similar with the wells, like showing you the actual well that your money went to. I think, nonprofits are like, that's going to be like a logistical nightmare. Like, can't we just show them another well? They'll never know the difference. But it creates that meaningful human connection when you know that it's the actual person or project that your money went to.
Sure. Yeah, that's great advice, especially, what's funny is our Canadian partner who got us involved with the Peruvian group for this charity, for the aftercare orphanage we just helped fundraise to build the second building for. Mm-hmm. Before we were officially partnered with them, I was on this just personally giving them $25 a month for buying kids food, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking like, I'm so busy with Child Rescue. I'm already giving so much there. Do I need to keep this up? And it was like that week that I got a photo of these two little 5-year-old kids, former street kids who had been hurt by adults that were being helped there, chowing down on some bread at the table. I was like, okay, never mind. I'm going to be giving these guys money the rest of my life. Right. It is interesting because it was like an authentic photo. It wasn't a it wasn't too doctored up. It wasn't too formulaic, right?
Right.
Okay, great advice. Well, another question for us, we always like to hear, is there anyone that set a good example for you, either early in your career or early in life, of how to treat others that you try to be more like?
I mean, so like everyone I know, I mean, honestly, it's hard to come up with one answer. I mean, some of the people that I think about, so when I first started working for myself, I was 22 and I needed to find business owners in Chicago where I lived. So I would go to the Chamber of Commerce networking event so I could meet business owners. And I was just like so out of my element. Everyone there was like 20 or 30 years older than me. I had no idea what to say. I had no idea how to run a business. Like I was just starting from scratch. And I made a few friends who were experienced business owners who just like sat me down and like told me what they knew about running a business. I remember my friend Adrienne, she was running a local lingerie boutique at the time. And I met her at one of these networking events. And I remember having lunch with her and being like, Adrienne, I know I'm supposed to be writing proposals, but I don't really understand what they are. Like, can you tell me what a proposal is? And she taught me some of the basics of like understanding the finances of a business. And I just like, when I think of how like naive I was, I just really appreciate those people spending their time helping me, sharing what they had learned. And I love that about entrepreneurship. It's not so much about like these like gurus or big figureheads. It's just I have a lot of entrepreneurs who are friends, and those are my favorite people to ask for advice and talk to. They're not necessarily famous or running giant empires. They're just like good people in the trenches every day, and that's who inspires me.
It's interesting how that generosity becomes contagious, huh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, yeah, you can't, when someone's helped you like that, you can't like, I don't know. It's hard to turn down someone young who's asking you about finances. You're like, oh, you don't know. Someone has to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you.
Thinking of somebody who is fancy, I think I saw a picture of you with Richard Branson. Did you get to meet him somewhere?
I did, yeah. I got to go on actually 2 trips with Virgin Unite. So I got to go on safari in South Africa and also to Necker Island.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
He's a guy who I feel like has a lot of generosity and is not, like it seems like he's actively trying to help the rest of us catch up in the way he's generous with his advice and stuff. What was your experience with him?
So he's definitely someone I look up to in a huge way. And what was so interesting to me the first time I met him, which was in South Africa, was if you want to talk about someone who is not busy, Richard Branson is like the least busy dude I've ever met, which was totally shocking to me. Like what he would do on the trip is he would just like sit and look at the landscape, sit around and chat with people. He was not on his phone. He did not have, assistants coming up, pulling him away for calls or whatever. He truly has just like found great people to run his organizations and then totally delegated it. Really, really and truly lives, charity first, family first. And it's a great reminder, like you were talking about before, when you get caught up in these ideas of, I have to, have all this external proof of how well I'm doing, or I have to seem busy, or no one will think I'm important. It's like, well, Richard Branson seems to be pretty successful and well-respected and, seems to be doing great things in the world. And he is not busy. And he obviously has the wisdom to know that he is not the only human in the world that can do these really important things. So I definitely think about him if I'm feeling self-conscious that I should be doing more.
It's interesting. For me, it's like the difference between short-term thinking and long-term thinking, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like, when my 5-year-old spills something or didn't clean up and you're thinking like, my willpower gas tank is on empty. Like, do I really want to take the time to teach him how to clean that right? Or should I just do it myself?
Yeah.
And you think about the level of thinking. I mean, I think about that old How to Win or Think and Grow Rich Napoleon Hill book, right? Mm-hmm. It's not called Work Hard and Grow Rich, even though the advice we give to everyone else is to work hard, right? You think about the level of thinking it takes a Richard Branson to design the kind of businesses that have enough margin that he can afford the best people to hire them so that he doesn't have to be there, right? And that doesn't happen by accident. What happens by accident is somebody says, hey, can you come do this? And they're offering just enough money for for what you're willing to do it for. You know what I mean? Or, you know, you think of like, I've got this and we're making enough. And how cheap is the cheapest person who's barely qualified to get this done?
Right.
You know? I remember hiring at our investment fund, we'd hired mostly kind of, you know, $60,000 and $80,000 a year kind of staff. And we had one in-house lawyer. I think we paid her like $180, and she was awesome. But maybe 160, something like that. But this one point we brought on a guy, he'd been a 15-year engineer. We were doing energy investment stuff. And then he'd gone and done 15 years in the finance world. And we brought him on. It was like $300,000 a year. And I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Right? And he completely changed my life. He had so much confidence with what we were doing. He took us into other investment banking firms and like started negotiating deals of like, yeah, I think you guys should give us that company for stock. We're not going to pay cash for it. And I'm like, we can do that. We're allowed, you know, like I thought we had to be a huge firm to be able to ask for that. And it was just fascinating. And what's funny is we brought on two guys of this, what seemed like the same caliber at that same rate. One guy was a total waste of money, and we paid him for like 3 months, $20,000 a month before we let him go. It was like the worst $60,000 ever. But then the other guy like completely changed my life, like made me want this like quest for people who can solve problems without you kind of thing. And I like wanted to like go, okay, who's the most expensive person that the business can afford, right? Who's the most qualified? Anyway, well, listen, parting advice. What if you could speak to a younger self, or just advice for innovators out there in general? What's kind of your soapbox? What would you put out there? Yeah,
you know, based off what we're just talking about, when are you going to do the things that you want to do? I mean, so often you talk to people, like you mentioned, you're consulting. So being in software, a lot of people, you know, are in consulting and they want to be in software, right? They say, I don't like the consulting business. I want to do a software business instead. But they have there's just this idea of like someday, I don't know, they're going to like win the lotto and all their staff will be struck dead on the same day. And that will be the opportunity to start over, you know, like I don't know if that's the fantasy. Like you have to choose this, and there's never a good time, and it's never easy, you know, to make these changes. And again, so often people are like, oh, I'd love to have the type of business where I can leave for 3 months and my staff just does it without me. So it's like, well, what choices are you making today to make that happen? A phrase that I always repeat to myself is just, you reap what you sow. And so I just always remember, okay, what seeds am I planting today? What am I doing today where in a month from now and a year from now and 30 years from now, I can reap what I'm sowing today, because you have to plant the seeds sometime if you want it to happen. Yeah,
that's so true. This idea of like, if that's the fruit I want to pick, right? Like, am I planting that kind of seed?
Yeah.
Because the default, I mean, look at us. We all go to school. We get programmed to do your own work, right? And we get programmed to like try and win the award of getting the A+, and everybody look at us for the work we did, right? Where if you're going to build a business, that's hard enough work. But if you're going to add to it, designing and doing the work to build the systems that eventually will not need you, like until you can afford that, you kind of have to do both jobs, right? And it's painful, and there's no short-term fire to build the long-term program. No wonder it gets put off, right?
Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's a hard choice. You know, you are going to, maybe make less money in your business now so that you can do less billable work, right? And focus more on these longer term projects, whatever. It's not going to fall in your lap. You have to make that hard choice every day.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody listening, go to meetedgar.com, sign up. It'll take less of your time so you can spend that time building the kind of business that eventually doesn't need you to be physically present. But
hanging out with Richard Branson while Edgar does your social media.
Right. Seriously, you heard it here first, folks. Okay. Thanks again for making time. Really enjoyed the conversation. That was part 2 of our interview. If you missed part 1, please go back an episode and download the episode before this one for the first half of the interview. As always, please check icollective.co for show notes of things referenced during the interview and to learn more about our guest. And if you're interested, we'd love to have you learn more about the charity Child Rescue. Go to the menu page on iCollective and click on Child Rescue. Thanks so much.